When growth stalls, most leaders reach for surface fixes like new campaigns, a sharper sales deck, even new hires. But the real issues are often deeper, such as misaligned systems, broken handoffs, or unreliable data. That's why we built the Growth Readiness Score. In just 5 minutes, you'll get a clear score across 4 critical areas of your revenue operations and see how you stack up against your peers with benchmark data. Tap the link in the show notes to get started. It's quick, insightful, and often reveals issues leaders don't expect.
I think a lot of companies and a lot of individuals like the novelty of AI, but they don't understand the possibilities of what AI can do yet. And I think that's a big opportunity for people out there, especially those who are the early adopters of AI, to really get out there and help other companies to adopt AI. And not just about teaching the staff to go and to type, here's an email, can you create a reply? No, not that type of rudimentary thing, but to say, hey, what is there that if I were able to save you 30 minutes or an hour each week, what is it that I could do for you? And to take them through that thought process and to show the true value. That's where the value of AI is.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. Hi, and welcome back to the RevOps Champions podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chang, owner of Unified Technologies Group, a technology and IT solutions provider focused on helping organizations build more secure, efficient, and reliable operational systems, which of course is music to my ears. With a background in technology, healthcare, IT, and business operations, Charles brings a proactive, systems-first mindset to solving operational challenges. His philosophy, which is be proactive rather than reactive, reflects a practical approach to leadership, infrastructure, and long-term business stability. Through Unified Technologies Group, Charles works closely with organizations to strengthen the technological foundations that support performance, security, and scalability, particularly in environments where reliability and operational continuity are critical. Charles, welcome to the RevOps Champions podcast.
Thank you so much, Brendon. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Charles, so you're known to, by your philosophy of proactivity. So when you say be proactive rather than reactive, how has that mindset shaped the way that you build systems and lead organizations?
Yeah, I think a big thing for us at least is we're very data centric, which means that we're looking at trying to look at the data that we're able to collect and to see if we can somehow predict what is going to happen, whether it's in a system, whether it's some sort of new SOP that we've created, to always look at, well, let's not just look to see if we're able to fix a problem, because that's what SOPs and whatnot are created, or systems are created for, but to also predict, okay, this SOP may be good for a year, 2 years, but what's coming up after that? And to always constantly look at data so that we can try to not react to a situation once it occurs, but to try to be proactive and to say, oh, you know what, there's a trend here, we need to change something.
Right. So yes, we actually talk about that a lot, in the franchise space too. When franchises, they get to 10 units and then 30 units and then 100 units, and those who are successful get to 300 and 1,000 units. And the difference between those who seem to be successful and the ones who aren't is that the ones who are successful know that things are going to break as they go through those different growth stages, which I think, goes really well with your sort of mindset of knowing that, just going into things, knowing that things are going to change. Again, only if you're growing. If you're not growing, then maybe things aren't going to change. But if you're growing, things are going to change and your systems are going to break, and you're going to need to replace those. So knowing that in advance is typically, I can see how that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. There's no system that's going to be 100% good for a long period of time. There's so many external factors that come into play that You're just waiting for it to break. But instead of waiting completely until it breaks, it's to look at what indicators are there that show that, oh, okay, it's time for us to take a deeper dive into this.
Right. Yeah. So on that note, Charles, where do you most often see companies become reactive instead of proactive when it comes to operations and their technology?
Yeah, I think even before technology, one of the big things is when it comes to hiring. And oftentimes it's the question of, do I hire first and then do I scale? Or do I scale first and then do I hire? And, it's a one solution that fits all situations. No, it's not. But at least for us, I can say what has worked very well is being able to plan for the future, understanding how you're going to scale and why you want to scale, and then to hire for that scaling has always worked out well for us.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because we're seeing that, like the example I gave earlier of franchise brands that sort of they get to 30 units and then they get to 100 units. And again, the ones who get to 300 units, they typically have to change their leadership team pretty dramatically on that sort of growth path. Otherwise, it's highly unlikely that they'll get there. And, what we talk about a lot on this show because of the sort of the revenue operations model approach that we take, and your response was spot on. We talk about people, process, data, and technology last. So even though most people, when they meet you and I, they think of us in the technologies, which we both know comes last, even though you need that in order to scale, but you're not going to be successful implementing technology if you don't have the people piece figured out, which starts with hiring and leadership and culture and all those good things. And then, of course, being clear about your processes. And then, as you mentioned earlier, the data component is so important because that drives the decisions that you need to make. And you need those three in place, as you and I know, before you can properly implement any technology.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're spot on when you say technology should be last. And it's not because, technology is difficult to solve. It's just without the right people, well, who's going to use that technology?
Mhm.
That's what it comes down to in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, and part of the people piece that we talk about all the time is communication, right? So
Mm.
it's people and leaders who have the ability and the I guess the capability and the confidence to know what they're communicating is gonna make a difference in the processes and SOPs that they're building.
Absolutely. And, that comes down to, right, really being able to be clear about the vision and where you want to get to and the why. Why do you want to get there? Without that, right, really, it's always like, leadership is such an important thing where if that leadership is not able to get buy-in from everyone downstream of them, well, everyone is going to be in chaos.
Right.
And that's where, having that clear picture and being able to articulate that clear picture downstream is so important.
Yeah. And I know we're going to get to AI in a little bit because we're seeing that movie all over again now. But let's put that on hold for a second. And that is so, Charles, as businesses grow, like what are the most common operational or sort of infrastructure gaps that start creating friction across teams?
Well, when it comes to operations, I think one of the big things is, if we're talking about like small business, a lot of them don't have SOPs to start with. And that's such a big issue. It's, even the simple things of hiring a new receptionist or hiring a new salesperson. Well, who's going to train these people now? So it's that operations side is such an important key factor, but to document it according to the culture, according to how the visionary wants things done, is such an important component of being able to scale. And that's one of the big things that we've seen, at least within the healthcare industry. I can definitely talk about this. Most dental practices, most veterinary clinics, most medical clinics won't have SOPs. And this creates a very large friction when it comes to their ability to scale. If they want to scale, that visionary person or that office manager can't be the one that's always onboarding and offboarding people. Well, you can only onboard one person at a time, right? And so in order to be able to truly scale, you have to document everything.
Right.
And it's not an easy thing to do, right? Especially like you can get something off the shelf, obviously, that is a generic type of solution, but it will not have the components of the culture of how that visionary wants things done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which of course, comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is without that in place, which again is the accountability chart and the
Mhm.
sort of knowing who your next hires need to be and how they need to be successful and building the SOPs around that. You cannot build any infrastructure beyond that until you have those basics in place, right?
Exactly. And you know, it's it's funny, although Unified Technologies, we provide IT infrastructure and IT solutions to a lot of these healthcare clinics. Many of them ask, well, how did we do with our clinic? Because we do own a clinic as well.
Right.
And the first thing I tell them is, hey, if you're building a new clinic, you have a lot of extra time right now. Spend time documenting how you want things done. And unfortunately, it's maybe 1% of those people that actually do it. And the ones that do, you can see they're the ones who are scaling a lot easier because they know what they want as an outcome. However, the ones that don't, they're always asking, how'd you do this? How'd you do this? How'd you do this? And it's not about IT they're asking me. They're asking about operations. And doesn't matter how much I share with them, in the end, because they're not documenting anything, they're still not able to scale, even though I tell them are the solution that we used.
Yeah, which is consistent with something that you and I have talked about before, which is how critical operational leaders are and
Mhm.
how very few organizations of any type really do grow and scale until they have operational leadership, which typically, in other words, if it's still the visionary leader who's trying to do everything, it's going to be really hard to scale until they have an operational leader in place, who of course is someone who loves putting processes and things in place and is really good at it, whereas
Mhm.
most visionary leaders are not very good at that, and they
Right.
often are the first ones to become frustrated when things don't work the way that they envisioned them. But
Right.
until someone has made it really easy for someone else to hire and for someone else to onboard and for someone else to keep the people happy and motivated and bring in more people like them, it's going to be really hard to scale and grow, right?
Absolutely. Like visionaries are very, very important for sure in any organization. However, they're not very good, me included, at being able to really articulate what it is that we want because we see a specific future. However, we're very, very bad at telling people because oftentimes we're skipping so many steps as we articulate these visions. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, people who are, high fact finders, high follow through. So people, who understand Colby, they need that granular description, which
Hmm.
we hate doing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
Anyway, I think most people, I'm guessing, most people, like, would get that, but I always find it's a good reminder because, of course, I'm in that category of visionary leader as well, who without, good operational people around me, I wouldn't get much done.
absolutely. We always, it's, you know what, we've spoken about collaborations in the past as well. And it's a collaboration with, you know, everyone else in the organization as well.
Absolutely. Yes, everything is a collaboration. You're right.
Yes.
Charles, in your experience, what role does technology play in helping organizations scale more consistently and efficiently?
Yeah, so we look at technology in a few ways. We look at it from the security perspective because obviously, if it's technology, there's data and data needs to be secure, especially nowadays. So we are always looking at the security aspect as well as the uptime. So those are two important perspectives of technology that always need to be emphasized. But we cannot also not discuss disaster recovery. A disaster is going to happen, and it's how quickly can you recover from that disaster. We always tell all of our clients if you're connected to the internet, it's not if you are going to be hacked, it is when you will be hacked. And
Right.
when you are hacked, how are you going to recover from it? That is much more important in our perspective than looking at implementing the latest workstations or the latest servers. all of that is not going to do anything unless you have the proper policies for security and for disaster recovery in place. Because if you don't, first of all, have those two things in place, well, you are going to get hacked and then you are not going to be able to recover from that disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which of course comes back to your sort of philosophy of being proactive. I must say though, I'm sure I'm not the only person thinking this now. Or, as you say that, it seems it's not very exciting, right?
No, no, it's not. It's not exciting, but that's how you want it. You don't want it to be exciting.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially during COVID, we had a number of our clients being hit with ransomware, especially within the dental space. In fact, here in Ontario, the Royal College of Dental Surgeons of Ontario sent out a memo that dental clinics were being targeted for ransomware. And what
Mm,
we saw as a trend, what we think is that once a dental office paid the ransom, well, they would take the same information, put into the dark web, and let other hackers go and do the same thing to the client. Because I hate to say it, most dental clinics don't learn from their first encounter
yeah.
with security issues. They just leave it status quo again and end up getting hacked again.
Yeah. They
Um,
think it might be statistically like a one-off thing.
right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not, right? Because your information is being sold on the dark web all the time. So, and
Yeah.
that's where we like to say we don't want it to be exciting.
Yes. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
So, Charles, how should leaders think about balancing speed and growth with stability and security?
Yeah, you know what? That's a hard one because, especially if I speak of it from my perspective as being a visionary, we don't want to stop. And that's something where it can be frustrating if we feel like we're being slowed down for sure.
Hmm.
At least for me, my strategic assistant, as well as my integrators, when I have my weekly meetings with them, and particularly with our quarterly and our annual meetings, when we discuss because we do implement EOS rocks,
Hmm.
they're I give them full authority, push back. If you think that we're moving too quickly, you gotta push back. But at the
Hmm.
same time, that does not negate the fact where sometimes I will be pushing back against their pushback as well to say,
Sure.
especially because if we do see something happening in the market and we need to capitalize on it quickly, and which again doesn't mean necessarily revenue, but it could be a market share. It could be, AI, just because how quickly AI is advancing. So really week after week, something new is coming out. If we want to be able to capitalize on something like that, we have to be very cognizant of the fact of the pushback that we're receiving as well. But the first thing that I do is for sure give them full authority to say, hey, Charles, we're going too quickly. We can't keep up with you. And then in that perspective, I now have to consider, okay, do I need to bring on more people? Do I need to change some processes? Do we have the right people in the right seats? So
Hmm.
there are many things now to consider at that time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, I mean, that makes total sense. And I think, again, it sounds like a perfect, again, collaboration too, right? Where everybody has their job and some people's, even inside a business, some people's job is to keep pushing forward, and other people's job is to make sure that systems are stable and secure. And you're
Right.
and you're continuously finding that balance, and of course you do it out of trust and respect, and you make decisions on a weekly basis at least to make sure that you're making the right decision for the business as a whole.
Mhm. Like oftentimes when we move too quickly, we'll often see like the client experience KPIs start to diminish slightly. And that's one of the things that we'll always consider as well, because when client satisfaction is starting to lower, we know, oh, okay, there's maybe we're just trying to push too quickly on something,
Hmm.
because that's the front stage, and we want to make sure that front stage is always a positive experience for our clients, even if the backstage suffers a bit because of the fast rollout of something. But even on that, we don't want to burn out the staff as well.
Right. And it comes back to what you were saying earlier. Like, so apart from the CX, the customer experience,
Mhm.
what we call the EX on the, and the internally, you
Yeah.
want to make sure that you've thought through the amount of training that has to take place for whatever new thing that you're rolling out, and being realistic about the time frame that it's going to take, and the communication, again, as we all know, this communication typically has to happen multiple times, and you have to have a proper training plan, et cetera, before it actually does take, and whatever the new thing is properly adopted and used, and then internally the team starts to see the benefits of why we're doing this. But yeah,
Mhm.
but it does take a lot of time and communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does.
Yeah. Charles, so a lot of companies wait until something breaks before improving their systems. How can leaders create a culture of prevention and preparedness?
Yeah. So one thing that we do all the time is to rely upon the people who are involved in, let's say we're it's a specific system, to give feedback along that entire system to say, hey, you know what, this is not working. There's something wrong here. But throughout the entire system, and in fact, for all SOPs that we have sort of like a feedback loop where we want information, not just from data, not just from numbers, but also from people giving their frank opinions about it too. They're the ones on the front lines. Like it's why wouldn't we rely upon them to give their frank opinions about what's working and what's not working?
Yeah,
That's something that we're doing all the time with our staff as well. In fact, we just sent out a survey regarding AI integrations for two of our companies to say, hey, are these AI integrations, are they helping you or are they causing more problems for you? Because if they are causing problems, then we got to take a step back and take a look at it.
sure.
But really, it's to depend upon them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, Charles. So we've now arrived at the time, because we're talking about sort of what's happened in the past. The things that you've shared, I think, are still absolutely relevant today to anyone listening. But now looking ahead, and through the lens of the AI that you've now mentioned a couple of times, that you're rolling out and are starting to see the opportunities for some of your clients, how do you see operational leadership evolving as businesses become more dependent on technology, automation, and AI?
Yeah, I think as a leader, really one of our main jobs is to see how can we make the working environment better for the people who we work with. And what that means is if there are things that people don't like to do, let's say for example, um, writing emails or replying to emails or to text messages, whatever it may be, then it's really to understand, okay, first of all, why don't they like to do it? And then, well, is there a way that we can either find someone who enjoys doing that stuff to do it, or and that's in EOS that's delegate and elevate. I think that's
Yep.
their tool there. Or it's to find a technology that can help to take some of those, I guess, those roles or those aspects of a job out of that person's realm,
Sure.
so that we can make their work environment better. And that's where, again, for us, the simple thing was to give our employees that delegate and elevate that form. What do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? What are you good at, but somewhat enjoy? What do you hate and you're bad at? And what do you hate to do, but you're good at? Right. And
Mhm.
and just to fill that out, just really study that and say, hey, is there some way that we can use AI to solve some of these? I call them frictions because if it's a friction for them, then we want to be able to take it off so that they can really concentrate on the things that
Mhm.
they really enjoy doing,
Yeah.
and to see can we use AI to solve some of these solve some of these issues that we see. And
Mhm.
and when did we do this? Maybe around 2 weeks ago. And we're just in the process of looking at some of the other things now that we can automate using AI.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I mean, you've been an early adopter in rolling out AI, both for your sort of your own productivity,
Yeah.
but then also within your companies, and I believe you're now sort of, or, at the point where you could potentially do the same thing for some of your clients based on what you've built for yourselves. And I like that that sort of the friction point that you were talking about, these different frictions that happen in different people's roles, which most people refer to as mundane tasks or
Mhm.
repetitive tasks or tasks that people don't. But you're right that what they all have in common is that they're creating friction either for that individual or for that team, and then
Yes.
ultimately for the whole organization and slowing things down. So if there's a way that you can either delegate, elevate, or automate
Mhm.
that, then of course, why wouldn't you want to do that? But so as you're learning from what you've done as someone who's leading with AI, what have been some of your initial learnings and or moments where you've gone, actually maybe this is time to sort of take a step back before we move forward again, or what have been some of the biggest breakthroughs from a sort of productivity perspective?
Yeah, so I think from the implementations that we have already performed, a few of the things is being able to recognize, first of all, what AI is good at doing when it comes to any sort of automations. Repetitive tasks, just like you had mentioned, one of the easiest things to do is those repetitive tasks. One thing that we did, for example, was at the dental clinic for reconciliations of any sort of revenue and reconciliations of any of the expenses that we have. We had a bookkeeper doing this, but then it's a quarterly bookkeeper that would come in and do it on a quarterly basis. Now we created an automation using AI where any one of the staff can take a picture of either an invoice or of any insurance payments that came in
Hmm.
and just put it into one folder. It'll recognize that, well, this is for the dental clinic, and live right there, it's filling out the ledger right away. So now it's creating a weekly summary report and a monthly summary report live, and we are on the verge of letting our bookkeeper go because first of all, it's done faster, it's done better because now we have it in a dashboard as well. So
Hmm.
it's visual perspective of it. And at the same time, it's not about, trying to reduce or trying to save money, but rather it's about, okay, so instead of doing that, like I'm not going to replace our accountant for sure,
Hmm.
but it's about, okay, if we're not having to do this, is there now somewhere where I can spend that extra money to do something else, right? To
Hmm.
invest that in a better way. So, and
Sure.
that's where I think that recognition of where do you want to employ AI and why is such an important question to ask all the time. And for the easiest place that you can start are the repetitive tasks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good example. And that, one of the other things, Charles, that I wanted to ask you in this regard, which is something I think that again you see coming up now again more frequently, that we used to, we've been working in the automation space for the last 14 years, and this was all prior to the AI that we have now and the sort of this next level of automation. And that example you gave now was a perfect example of how you can automate something that you couldn't do a year or two ago, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things about automation has always been sort of the analogy that I use. Okay, we're now saving Mary 2 hours a week from what she was doing last month.
Mhm.
What? How do we then tell Mary what she needs to use those additional 2 hours every week for? Have you
Mhm.
have you found a sort of a solution or a model for handling that I guess
Mhm.
opportunity?
Yeah. Like for us, we found that if we have the right people in the right seats, if we're able to save them time because of, them filling out that delegated elevate,
Yeah.
they're already thinking about, If I had just a little bit more time, I'd be able to do this better."
So then you go
And
back to that list and say, okay, you now have that time. Yeah. Okay.
right. And that's exactly what we're experiencing is that we save them, just like you said, let's say if it was 2 hours a month or even 30 minutes a week. They're able to now put more focus and, do we know whether the good and that they're good at and they love to do is that their unique ability? We don't know, but it's something that they want to do.
Yes.
So, and if it's something that they want to do, why would I stop them from doing it?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the only way they're really going to find out whether it is their unique ability or not, right? Because if
exactly.
they have the opportunity to do it. and then they
Yeah,
might realize after a month or two, in fact, it's not as fun as they thought it would be, and then in which case they redo the exercise,
exactly. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
and it's a
But
continuous progress. Yeah.
yes, but that's the trend that we've seen is that they're able to spend more time on what they always wish that they had more time for. Because we all know in any job, I wish I had another 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is. We all
Hmm.
wish for that. And
Sure.
if we're able to grant that, they're usually the ones who are spending time, especially if it's the right people in the right seats.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, Charles, and then sort of as we sort of look 6 to 12 months from now, so we're sort of heading into, let's say, the end of 2026 and into 2027. What are you most looking forward to from an AI perspective, and how that sort of layers into what you're currently doing and the services you're currently providing to your clients?
The big thing that we see with AI right now is that as it is becoming more and more connected with different types of applications, whether they are web apps or whether they're desktop applications, that integration is becoming more and more not just relevant, but there's just so many more of these integrations. As that continues to occur, more and more things will be able to be automated. With that automation and with the LLMs being better and better at predicting exactly what we want as we
Mhm.
speak to it or type with it, is that the complexity that currently exists when we are asking, an AI, hey, can you do this? For example, the bookkeeping. It took me around 45 minutes to actually go back and forth to get it to where we wanted it. That is going to be able to be probably brought down to maybe 15 minutes later on. And because of now the different integrations, it's able to go and do it on its own. It's
Yeah.
able to understand because now it's not just me asking, but how many millions of other people have asked for that.
Mhm.
So that's definitely going to happen. Another thing that I do see is the more and more companies wanting to adopt AI is going to be a big thing. I think a lot of companies and a lot of individuals like the novelty of AI, but they don't understand the possibilities of what AI can do yet. And I think that's a big opportunity for people out there, especially those who are the early adopters of AI, to really get out there and help other companies to adopt AI to, and not just about teaching the staff to go and to type, oh, here's an email. Can you create a reply? No, not that type of rudimentary thing, but to say, hey, you know what? What is there that if I were able to save you 30 minutes or an hour each week, what is it that I could do for you? And to take them through that thought process and to
Mhm.
show the true value. That's where the value of AI is
Mhm.
to be able to do that, it's going to be amazing. And because of all these integrations to the different, again, web apps and desktop apps, it's just really, it's how creative can you be? That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that. You're right. It's an exciting time. But sort of coming back to your, the world that you come from, where you're always again putting security first.
Mhm.
So for those early adopter leaders currently wanting to roll out AI potentially maybe a little too fast, where it might actually do some damage to their organizations, what advice do you have for those leaders who maybe aren't they're not approaching it in the right way, and it could actually cause not just security issues, even though that's definitely one of them. What advice would you have for leaders that maybe moving a little too fast in some areas of AI rollout?
Yeah. So one thing, for example, with us that we do, like even for the, like we have another one where any email that comes in, if the AI is able to create a reply, by going through the entire email thread, then we have instructed it to create the reply, but put into the drafts.
Yep,
Don't send them
absolutely.
and have a second set of eyes look at it. So our staff go in now and take a look at those drafts. Okay, that's great. Send. Okay, that's great. Send. Oh no, that's not good. Let's change it.
Yeah.
So it's to have that second set of eyes for sure.
Hmm.
Another thing that we do also is to make sure that we are using the AI in a sandbox first and giving it sanitized information just to make sure, are there any data leaks that can occur? Is there anything that we're just leaving too open for the AI to, even by accident, because AI hallucinates, to
Hmm.
send out, for example, the x-rays of one patient to another patient, right? It's that type of thing that we're always looking at and testing in a sandbox environment extensively before rolling out. It's something that needs to occur because, yeah, I forgot what the latest status is, that it's 60 or 65% less hallucination than last year, but
Hmm.
still it doesn't negate the fact that it still hallucinates.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Primarily because it doesn't have enough context, or yeah, it's just working with too much data.
Right. And it's because AI, it's just data, and it's just, you know, it doesn't know, well, okay, sure, it understands what HIPAA is, and it understands what all these different types of policies are, but yet it still makes mistakes because it just doesn't understand to, you know, maybe it's okay to take a little bit of risk, or maybe it's okay. Maybe it doesn't have enough information to say this x-ray belongs to patient A, but not patient B. And
Uh-huh.
therefore you shouldn't send it to patient B. So it's you just have to be able to make sure and test whatever prompts you have in the sandbox extensively before rolling it out as a production.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I think, one of the things you mentioned there, like the sort of the email draft example, again, is I think one of the things we've all learned is that you have to have the human in the loop, right? So as your processes are changing and your SOPs are changing to incorporate AI to assist everybody in their roles and responsibilities, you still, I mean, so even though people might be able to automate a lot of things and therefore save time and then elevate what else they can do. There has to be, again, the proper process and SOP in place. Charles, I guess one last question. So in EOS, of course, everyone's familiar with the accountability chart. For
Mhm.
those who don't run an EOS, they have some sort of an org chart which everybody can visualize. You have your visionary CEO at the top, and then you have your COO integrator, and then you have your functional leaders, and then you have everybody who has a role in the business to make sure that they're driving the processes that make the business run and profitable. Are you already starting to see adding the sort of the AI stuff? So every box on that accountability chart or organizational chart has people's roles and responsibilities. Are you already seeing or using digital staff that are or agents that are supporting each of those roles?
Yes, yeah, definitely, for sure. We, at least within our companies, we're definitely doing that. Let's say, for example, let's say the bookkeeper, right? It was an actual bookkeeper, but now we have a bookkeeper agent. And receptionist is not completely removed, because we still feel that most people want to speak to a person rather than an AI agent.
Hmm.
But specific tasks within the receptionist role are definitely being moved over to an agent solution for sure. And in fact, I would say at least the mid-size to larger enterprise companies, we do see more and more of the AI department or the AI guru starting to become more and more prevalent in companies as well.
Oh, like at that functional
Yes.
leader level.
Yes. Yeah, we
Hmm.
do. We are starting to see that as well.
Interesting.
And it's the ones who are leaning forward for sure.
Yeah,
We you would think, because of all the news that's going on, that a lot of these enterprise companies, they're really investing a lot into implementing AI into the companies. I want to say the small to medium sized businesses are actually moving faster than enterprise.
sure. Yeah, they're
Um,
more agile. Yeah.
Right. And they're doing that by not necessarily bringing in an AI person and paying them as an employee, but rather they are, bringing in third parties who have experience doing this,
Hmm.
and to hire them to, at least scope out what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
And for them to see, oh, okay, so this is what AI can do for us now,
Hmm.
type of thing.
Yeah.
So which is very interesting, because who knows, right? end of this year, again, as prompting becomes easier and easier, are we going to need that AI, that expert? I don't know. I personally, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to need them soon. It's a
Yeah,
scary place. I love it. I love
sure.
it, but it's a very scary place for certain people because they're gonna be felt they're gonna feel that they're so far behind. But I think because prompting is going to become that much easier, I think they're going to be able to leapfrog over the people who are the early adopters. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be really interesting to see. But I,
Mhm.
I, I tend to agree with you because a year ago, we were going through the same decision making process. Like, do we need to hire a chief AI officer,
Mhm.
whether they're full time or fractional?
Right.
It just never made sense. And then it
Hmm.
got to the point where we could essentially play that role ourselves using AI, to sort of help us be that chief AI officer for our company.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I haven't really thought about it for a while, but now that if I think in a year from now, I couldn't imagine having a chief AI officer, even though to your point, for those mid-sized companies right now, it might make a lot of sense
Hmm.
because you need somebody who has the time and the bandwidth and the experience to get the rollout done. But then
Yeah.
what do they do in a year from now? I don't know. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. It's all going to come down to that implementation portion of AI.
yeah,
Right.
which of course is going to be continuous. I mean, it's
Right, right, and because imagine now going through, now having to modify all of your operations because you've brought in. It's not a small job, and that's where really people who have the experience right now with the early adopters, it's to bring them in and, to speak about things like this and to understand, "Oh, okay, so now I have to get rid of this SOP, and now I have to modify this SOP. How is that gonna impact my day-to-day business?"
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
exciting times.
It is, absolutely.
Charles, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners are learning a lot as well. And we'll make sure to share your links in our episode page when it's published. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you so much, Brendan. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.